What if the worst part of your trip isn't the airline, the ticket price, or even airport security, but the airport itself quietly working against you from the moment you walk in? You arrive thinking airports are neutral spaces, carefully designed machines meant to move millions of people efficiently. But what most travelers never realize is that many airports are built with hidden design flaws that subtly drain your energy, waste your time, increase your stress, and even make you spend more money without noticing. And as a professional travel planner, airport security analyst, and airport systems researcher, I can tell you this isn't accidental. It's structural, psychological, and deeply embedded into how modern airports evolved over decades. Because airports weren't designed for comfort first, they were designed for control, flow manipulation, and profit optimization. And that single truth explains almost every frustration you've ever felt while traveling. Starting with the moment you step through the entrance doors, where the ceiling height suddenly drops after the grand exterior, a deliberate psychological compression, meant to slow your walking pace and shift your brain from public city space to controlled authority zone. And you may not notice it consciously, but your shoulders tense, your steps shorten, and your mind becomes more compliant, which makes the next flaw more effective. Confusing because many terminals intentionally block clear views of check-in counters, security lanes, or departure halls, forcing you to hesitate, look around, and follow crowds instead of logic. And when humans feel uncertain in unfamiliar environments, they default to herd behavior, which airport designers use to guide masses without signage overload. But the downside is that this creates bottlenecks, unnecessary walking, and stress spikes, especially for first-time flyers or older travelers. And then comes the lighting problem, one of the most underestimated airport design flaws of all. Because many terminals mix natural light with harsh artificial LEDs at the wrong color temperatures, confusing your circadian rhythm and making you feel fatigued faster than normal, which is why you can feel exhausted even before boarding a long-haul flight. And from a security perspective, inconsistent lighting also increases facial misrecognition rates in both humans and cameras, quietly increasing secondary screenings and delays, yet airports keep doing it because bright, cold lighting keeps people alert enough to move, but tired enough not to linger without spending money. And speaking of money, let's talk about walking distances. Because airports love long corridors, not for fitness, but for retail exposure. And many terminals intentionally place gates far from security exits, so you must pass duty-free, food courts, and branded stores. But the flaw here is that poor moving walkway placement often creates uneven pedestrian flow, where fast walkers clash with slow walkers, families, and elderly passengers, increasing frustration and missed connections. And I've seen internal airport reports where these conflict zones are acknowledged but left unresolved because retail revenue outweighs passenger comfort. And then there's seating, or more accurately, the lack of good seating. Because many airports design gate seating with subtle discomfort armrests at odd angles, rigid backs, cold materials, not to torture you, but to prevent sleeping and long stays, pushing you toward lounges, cafes, or premium upgrades. But this backfires during delays when exhausted passengers crowd the floor, blocking emergency paths and creating security hazards, something most travelers blame on airlines, not realizing it's a design flaw. And security itself has design problems too, because many airports still funnel passengers into serpentine queues with no visual endpoint, which increases perceived wait time even if the actual wait is short. And psychology studies show that unclear queues feel up to 40% longer than transparent ones, raising anxiety, aggression, and rule-breaking behavior, which security staff then have to manage, leading to more confrontations, more bag checks, and slower processing for everyone. And here's something almost no YouTube travel channel talks about: sound design. Because airports are noisy by nature, but poor acoustic planning amplifies stress, with hard surfaces reflecting announcements, rolling bags, and crowd noise into a constant low-level roar that keeps your nervous system activated, making you more irritable, less patient, and more likely to make mistakes like leaving items behind or misreading gate numbers. And from an operational standpoint, noise pollution increases staff fatigue and error rates. Yet many terminals prioritize aesthetic glass and steel designs over acoustic, dampening because it looks modern on postcards, not because it works. And don't even get me started on signage hierarchy, because airports often overload signs with too much information at once, while hiding critical details like walking time to gates, terminal transfers, or restroom locations, forcing travelers to constantly stop, turn around, and reorient, which breaks flow and creates micro delays that cascade into missed boarding calls and frantic sprints. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some airports benefit financially when you miss a connection because rebooking, lounge access, and overnight stays generate revenue across the airport ecosystem. Not directly for the airport authority maybe, but for its partners. And then there's the temperature imbalance flaw, where terminals are kept colder than necessary, especially near security and shopping areas, because cooler temperatures keep people moving and less likely to sit comfortably without spending. While gate areas might feel warmer due to crowd density and poor airflow, making boarding feel chaotic and uncomfortable. And this uneven climate control also affects immune systems, increasing post-travel sickness, something frequent travelers normalize without questioning why it happens so often. And let's talk restrooms, because poorly placed restrooms are not accidents either. Many are intentionally positioned away from main corridors to reduce crowding. But bad wayfinding and insufficient capacity near busy gates cause long lines that spike stress before boarding. And from a security lens, restroom congestion creates blind spots and increases unattended bag incidents. Yet redesigns are slow because plumbing changes are expensive and invisible to passengers who only complain temporarily. And one of the most invisible design flaws is time distortion. Because airports rarely display synchronized clocks clearly across terminals, forcing travelers to rely on phones, which increases screen time, distraction, and missed audio announcements. And from a behavioral standpoint, this makes passengers more dependent on push notifications and airline apps, reducing airport responsibility for direct communication. And then there's the emotional manipulation baked into airport layouts, where arrival halls feel compressed and exit routes feel long and indirect, making you feel relieved when you finally leave, while departure halls feel expansive and overwhelming, subtly reinforcing the idea that travel is stressful but arrival is freedom, a contrast that keeps people emotionally invested in the journey despite discomfort. And as an airport security expert, I can tell you many design flaws also increase profiling risks, because confusing layouts and inconsistent passenger flow make out-of-pattern behavior stand out more, meaning nervous, lost, or first-time travelers are more likely to be flagged for secondary screening, even when they've done nothing wrong. And this disproportionately affects elderly passengers, solo travelers, and people from non-dominant travel cultures, something rarely acknowledged publicly. And then there's the gate change problem, where airports announce last-minute changes, knowing that many passengers are already fatigued, distracted, or seated far away, creating controlled chaos that clears congested areas but leaves travelers feeling powerless. And yes, some airports still rely on this tactic during peak hours. And when you finally board, the jet bridge itself is often poorly ventilated, dimly lit, and acoustically harsh, amplifying end-of-journey stress right before you sit for hours, which is why so many people feel irrationally angry during boarding, even if everything else went smoothly. And the craziest part is that none of these flaws exist in isolation. They compound, small stresses stacking into big emotional fatigue, making travelers blame airlines, security staff, or themselves instead of questioning the environment. And that's the genius and the cruelty of it, because airports are systems, not just buildings. And systems shape behavior silently. And if you've ever wondered why you feel different inside an airport, more rushed, more tired, more impulsive, it's because the space is designed to make you that way. Not because you're bad at traveling. And now here's the part that actually helps you, because awareness changes behavior. And once you understand these unseen airport design flaws, you can travel smarter instead of harder. So my suggestion for you, especially if you want smoother, less stressful trips, is this. Arrive with a plan, not just a boarding pass. Wear layers to counter temperature manipulation. Walk with intention instead of following crowds blindly. Choose seats near walls or corners where noise is lower. Ignore retail paths unless you actually need something. Track walking times between gates proactively. Use airport maps before arrival, and most importantly, slow your breathing when the environment tries to rush you. Because the fastest way to beat a system designed to control flow is to stay calm inside it. And if you want more real, behind-the-scenes airport truths like this that no one explains honestly, then this is exactly why Golden Age travel tips exist. Stay curious and never let bad design steal the joy of your journey again.